Hello.
Hello?
Hey, my video won't be working maybe.
That's better. Hi, Benjamin.
Hey, Ben.
Nice to meet you.
Same.
Likewise.
And
Bentley?
you're working on the um, Q Park stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
is that how that's the right way to say it?
Yeah. I mean, you don't even have to say it because we stopped calling it that. So, oh,
Sweet.
there's the, yeah, we're kind of, that was a first round prototype and we're into kind of a second generation thing now. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hello, Paul. Great yourself. Hello, Shane. Hello, Benjamin. So we have, and Bentley is there somehow. Okay,
Muted?
good.
He's here and muted. There he is.
Yeah, my video wasn't working. I think I got it now.
And I'm running a tiny bit behind, but I should be okay yeah, should be okay.
So welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
good to be
think
here.
it's first. Yeah, I think it's the first time I see a few of you.
Yeah, Mark, I don't know
Definitely
if you
me.
remember our talk
Yeah, we
uh,
did.
about a
Yeah.
year ago.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
And Shane, have you been part of the group before?
No, just heard about recently. I interacted with someone named Steven, and read
Chris?
an article on your website, from the Maps map thing, but I've never interacted with anybody here.
Well, welcome.
Sweet. Well, good to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've walked Stephen through some of this and he's been helping us test a little bit, just a little bit so far. So I told him we were going to be here. He thought, I don't know if he planned to jump in.
Yeah, I think he posted in our Slack. He won't be able to make it. He's
Oh.
traveling.
Gotcha. Hi, Joel.
Hi, Jamal.
Yeah.
Hello.
Michael is there, maybe?
Yeah.
Wow, good turnout.
Good morning, everyone.
If he
Morning.
So, since we have new people, should we do a quick round or let's try to keep it quite brief? Maybe Shane, as the new guest, you should start. Or should we start to
Well,
break the ice?
I think it's
They
easier.
usually open with singing, Shane, if you could.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, yeah,
Opera,
yeah.
opera only, if I could choose. Sorry,
Okay,
Oh no.
should I go first?
Oh, I unplugged my
Awesome. Yeah, I guess mostly I'm here through Paul and Q Park, now XU. But very randomly met Paul after reaching out and seeing a demo, kind of independent software developer, and we started working on this project together. That's really, I guess, as far as an intro I can think of. I
and
live
he
in
hasn't
Canada,
stopped.
and I haven't stopped. Yeah, so I've been enjoying the ride, and we just kind of did an early prototype, some testing, and now we've refined it and are continuing on it because we both like it, and we you guys are interested in similar things, so it seems like a cool collaboration or interaction at least.
okay. I could go next. My name is Marc-Antoine. I've been in the group. Oh, Tim joined. Well, if Tim is here, maybe he should present the group because he kind of founded it.
Well,
Uh,
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. Also, I'm driving, so go ahead.
okay, fair. So I'll do my best to channel you then. Um, Tim's Tim started. He wrote this considerable article on what canonical debate should be. Uh, it's on the site. The idea is we have social debate, and there's a lot of things that are repeated, and it would be good to have a centralized place so that we can see what are the arguments, pros and cons, any particular claim that is made in social debate, and to improve public debate and democracy and all the good things. We've had a lot of discussion on what would be the right format for these kinds of arguments. And we've unearthed a lot of specific issues with a very simplistic notion of debate, such as just the one in Sekialo. But we've been since working on how to have a better debate representation. I'm a maximalist personally. I believe that we need full recursive hypergraphs to represent basically multiple interpretations of any statement by different parties. The real question is how to deduplicate similar arguments. And is it necessary, as some of us think, to formalize, to transform arguments into a more formal version, which makes the duplication easier, but then you have the difficulty of formalization. And of course, not everybody is comfortable with formalization, and we want to accept input from people who are not formalists. So we've spoken a lot about the need for progressive formalization of statements. And so we're playing with models of what a debate looks like, what statements look like, and so on. So that's partly canonical debate. That's partly my take on it, and let's move on and have somebody else present, maybe eventually, or whoever.
Yeah, I could do a quick intro. So Bentley Davis, I was right around with Tim when we first started all this. So 3-4 years, I don't know how long. Yeah, it's just a loose group of mostly software developers and other people that are interested in the space and trying to get us to, hopefully argue better and find agreement better. My little area right now is working on kind of a scoring system that'll help people reduce the cognitive load of exploring a map of an argument and challenging it, and a way for when you put claims in that they can't really be dismissed or ignored, and visualizations for that. And I've been working on that since 2011. And it's just, little prototypes, keep experimenting, finding out what doesn't work and try another experiment. So it's been years of that. Yeah, so software engineer professionally, and that's me. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. Since freshman year of college, I've been passionate about trying to help people make better informed decisions on controversial topics. And recently I've been creating some tools to help automate research using LLM technology, especially research around pros and cons. And so I've developed a tool that can take a claim and go and find the pros and cons that are being argued and quotes that support those. And then I'm currently trying to negotiate a proposal with Ballotpedia to see if I can help automate research that they do, and have created a political candidate contact information finder for them. So that's what I'm up to.
Cool.
I guess I can go. Yeah, I came to several meetings here for like a year ago, but I haven't come for like 6 months. So I wanted to check out how things are going. But basically, I'm also very interested in the argument. I guess like specifically coming to mutual understanding with other people on maybe hard to agree upon things. And I think my main focus is actually like on how to structure problems for the discussion. And then like argument is like a complementary aspect in the tool I'm building, that I have been working on for like a year and a half now. So I think that's yeah, I'm a developer. Popcorn to Michael. Cool. I'm Michael Gardner. I actually just looked up how long I've been coming to these meetings, and it was Marc Antoine. You sent me an email from the Tools for Thought. Like it was April of 2022, so a couple of years almost. We're almost at the couple year mark. But now I work on discourse graphs, which is described as like a decentralized knowledge exchange platform or protocol. And it's primarily currently being used to break scientific communications into modular discrete parts, like their questions, claims, evidence, and sources, and then creating relationships between them. And then doing that all within your workspace that you're taking notes in. So as you're doing your research, having meetings, you can easily translate that into questions, claims, and answers. And that's currently a Roam research plugin. And eventually they'd like to translate that into micro publications on subsets of your graph. And I'm also very interested in how to visually present argument maps. So that's me.
Awesome.
I don't know if you want to pop in, Felix, or if you're busy.
No, I'm fine. So, hey, I'm Felix Dietze. I'm from Germany, software developer. Right now I'm in a van in New Zealand preparing breakfast. So I joined CDL around 5 years ago, I think. But didn't join the meetings for about the last 2 years because I was working for a startup, and yeah, that was taking up all my time. Now I switched, so I have a bit more time again. I spend a lot of time working on like my goal is collective intelligence in general, and I think making people debate on the internet is like an important part of that, and negotiating the truth. Recently, yeah, I kind of split off into a little group we call Social Protocols with Johannes Nakayama and Jonathan Warden, and yeah, we're kind of thinking about trying to reapproach the problem a bit, more to that later, but like how to bring formalism to the minimum and extract the maximum of information. Yeah, more to that later. So next is maybe, who isn't done? Paul, maybe? I know. Oh wait, that's us? That's all?
Yeah, I think that's most everyone, unless
yeah,
Tim,
okay.
unless Tim wants to come in and talk, although we talked about him. So
Waiting to hear from note taker.
I guess my quick thing that I would just add, I came to this this whole thing from way back when, you know, with politics and you know, flame baiting and all that, and trolling online, and wondering if there was a solution for that. And at the same time, you know, wondering why we can't just accumulate knowledge faster. Are you still hearing me? I'm having technology issues, sorry.
Yeah.
So
Sounds good.
basically my current goal is to have just as an information architecture perspective, we've got to do better in terms of collaboration on decisions and that sort of thing. By, you know, every time somebody has a debate, we should accumulate it in one place so all the information's there, so we're not constantly repeating. I think that science could be made more efficient. I think all sorts of other epistemic systems could be so much more efficient if we could accumulate the information in a place that could be quickly found, and so we're not repeating ourselves. I see a lot of promise with AI. I see a lot of danger with AI, but also a lot of promise as a tool. The danger is, you know, if we don't do this sort of thing, then if we don't do something like the canonical debate, then it's really easy to produce fake news with AI. But the promise is that AI allows us to collect and accumulate knowledge in a much better format if we can harness it right. I guess that's my current perspective on things. But, you know, this is at this point a hobby. I have a full-time job, but I haven't even been able to make meetings of late. So I'm just glad I came in today.
awesome. So unless I'm missing anything, I guess, you know, Paul and Shane, glad that y'all wanted to kind of give us an update on what you're doing. We'd love to hear anything you'd like to
Yeah.
share.
I'll jump into that. So everybody's hearing me, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
So let me share screen. I've been in this interface in a minute. Here we go. Let's do that. Does that look like a look like a presentation? Okay, cool. Well, I mean, there's so much overlap from what I just heard and what I've personally been obsessed with for a long time. And it sounds, I love just the way Tim expressed it because it's just the same. It's like, you know, there's so many people disagreeing on so many things, trying to explore these disagreements, trying to make progress on them. And it seems feasible. And it seems like we just are accomplishing 5% of what's possible. And where I always came down on it is that it was a problem with structure, because in conversation and in debates, there's a territory of content and there's some structure to it. And as you're in a debate, you're sort of identifying that structure and trying to examine it, each piece of it. But as you examine a new piece of it, more structure appears, because it just keeps nesting, and at some point you reach the limits of people's ability to keep track of what's going on, and everyone just kind of gives up and walks away with their previous confirmation bias intact, and nothing really ends up happening. And it seems like, well, there is a bottom to these things. We just don't tend to get to the bottom of these things. So in kind of that political realm, that decision making realm, that sorting out disagreements, kind of what do you call it? That not lawyers, but where people facilitate people to work through disagreements. There's a lot of applications for just a
Arbitration.
better way. Thank you. For just a better way of doing these things. So I did something called QPark, and that was very much a one-on-one tool with a special methodology that went behind it. And because I just kept trying to contact people that I thought might be interested in it. And the one person I ended up reaching was Brett Weinstein, who's a bit of a public figure. Ironically, yesterday was on Tucker Carlson and said some things that I'm just like, well, let's just say I hope he's wrong. And so let's just say this: don't associate me with Brett Weinstein from a point of view perspective, because he takes all kinds of points of view, and I don't know what's right or wrong about it. But what he did do was recognize that what I was trying to work on had some value, and he gave me a little publicity with that by letting me interview him, which got me some testers for QPark. And then we did some testing on QPark, and I discovered some problems with it. And that led to what we're talking about today, which we're calling XU as a placeholder name for right now. And the primary objectives of this tool won't surprise you, facilitate deep focus, complete engagement across complex disagreements. But what we were doing, and also what I like to refer to as community sense making, but it's very much what Tim was talking about. It's like, if there's things we're already engaged in and already worked out, they should be part of a map that other people should be able to link to and build on. And you ought to have a way of being able to proxy off the pieces of complex things that you don't yourself understand, and be able to benefit from other people's ability to engage in those things productively. And so there's this sense that these things should be able to link together. Specifically, and unfortunately, these are things I think probably everyone in this room could talk for 2 or 3 hours about aspects of all these things. So I'm going to try to keep this part super brief and get into specifics and have it be a discussion. But our particular angle on this, I'd say what might make this a little bit different or differentiate itself from some of these other efforts. And that's, I find this just very interesting, is the idea that we're all sort of coming at the same thing. And there's so many ways to go about it, and there's so many little decisions to make in terms of what does your structure look like, and what does your interface look like, and what is the process, and what kind of user tools are important, and how much is graphing important versus a graphical approach versus a textual approach, and all these things. It's like I don't know if there's ever going to be one great way to do it. So what I'm really am hoping is that we can get you guys, because of your expertise and your experience with this, to hop in and test with us a little bit in what we have done, because that and you know, invite us to do the same in whatever projects you have to the extent that they're ready for that, because I think the hands-on is really valuable. So I want to make sure I don't forget to say that any of you that are interested, please reach out about getting a test ID in this XU system. So strategically, the biggest thing is to emphasize and maintain focus on structure. And we've tried to make the simplest possible structure that was universal. So this is where I think last time around, I clashed a little bit with Mark, or I won't say clash, but he challenged me quite a bit on some of where we were being loose and whether we can get away with being that loose. And so that might be a bit of an aspect of ours that might differentiate it. Is we're trying to keep the focus, keep the structure minimum, and we're supporting very much the idea of updates through time. So supporting the evolution of viewpoints with the idea of keeping the most important stuff on the surface, meaning that one thing that drives me absolutely crazy in the current world, the current media environment, is that we're all constantly being bombarded by streams of content. And those streams of content are all fragments of viewpoints. And what we lack is a consolidation. So I can turn on the news from one viewpoint or another, because news is almost always from a viewpoint now. And I can get all kinds of updates about the latest information about, say, Trump's trials, for example. But it's hard to find one place where I can say, you know, I would like the best argument for why, you know, Trump is liable for this particular crime or this particular accusation, and the best case against it. And I'd like that to be fairly up to date, fairly complete, and give me sort of a menu from there where I can dive into the underlying pieces that are important to me. And it's very hard to find those complete pictures anywhere. We're constantly getting fragments, updates, fragments. And what we're never getting is a clear, like consolidate that stuff into one place so I can find, you know, a complete picture. So that's big, which means you have to support people being able to update their viewpoints over time, but it's also important to be able to see what changed. If you're already familiar with something, you need to be able to see, you know, what's the new stuff without having to reread all the old stuff. All right, this next one is supporting informal engagement in the surface of maintaining the overall structure. And this is really new in what we started to do and what Shane and I really kind of hatched together. And a big part of what I want to show you today is that we've discovered that if you only try to work through the structure, people get sometimes confused, sometimes bogged down, or they end up using the structure to have a more traditional conversation. So people are so used to conversation as the means of exploring something that, and they're not used to the idea of, no, you don't need to have a conversation. You just need to update the structure with your viewpoint, that they start treating the tool as just another place to do what they're doing everywhere else. And so we needed to have almost a release for that in a way at times. And we also found that it was necessary in order to get the structure right, especially if you're engaging with somebody else, it's necessary to have some informal way to have little conversations basically that are focused on aspects of the map. And I'll talk about that in more detail, but somehow we had to let people kind of have little conversations without letting that run away and become just a typical conversation, but instead bring it back to the map and go, all right, what have we learned? When I say map, I mean the structure. And so, and another thing we've approached this with is QPark, as I said, was a one-on-one. So every time you got into QPark, it was like, we're going to have one debate with two people. We start at the top with the major question and we work through it. And then that entire thing is in one container. Here instead, we're looking at a more global viewpoint where all the questions in the world, all the debates in the world are in one big space. And so you can, and they're all organized around questions. And what that means is that you have to allow for, there's going to be a bunch of noise and there's going to be a bunch of garbage. And well, I wouldn't say you have to. One approach I think I heard today was you curate and you help try to normalize the content so that you have kind of one clear picture that everybody's looking at. Our approach is to let individual voices shine. So on any given question, you're going to find people that know a lot about that and have a strong viewpoint, and they can own that viewpoint. And somebody else can agree with them, but come from a completely different viewpoint as far as why, and that can sit side by side with that. And you can have obviously people who completely disagree and have their viewpoints. And you can have in there, you could theoretically have hundreds of viewpoints published on a question. And 50% of them could be noise kind of that nobody really looks at. And so if you think of it almost from like a Twitter standpoint of there's a crazy amount of stuff going on, but you just set your filter to where you see what you're interested in. And the community as a whole, and here Twitter would be a bad example because hopefully we have a higher quality community in some respects, but the community as a whole identifies the good stuff and promotes the good stuff. So if I'm looking for that great explanation on, say, the Trump documents case that comes from a perspective of he's guilty as hell, then the community has sort of identified for me, here's something that everybody has found really useful. This is a person whose viewpoint is very clear, very structured, very organized. So I'm drawn to that. That's promoted to me. I can dig through everybody else's if I want to. I can read the top 3 or 4, but I can really, but the community has helped me curate that organically through appreciation mechanisms and that kind of thing. And similarly with, I'm looking for the best critique of that guy's viewpoint. Something's been elevated as the best critique of that viewpoint, or something's been elevated as the best viewpoint from the other side of that argument. So that's the idea, is lots of stuff going on, and we're not trying to go around making everybody understand perfect mapping and coming up with perfect argument maps. Not at all. We're trying to make a fairly loose universal structure that makes it easy for lots of people to come in and participate, and then curate and elevate the good stuff from a community standpoint. So I don't know if that was, hopefully that came across. Shane, anything to add to that?
Honestly,
What
no.
exactly is your structure?
Was good.
All right, so we'll look at the structure, and what goes along with that is keeping a general audience in mind as much as possible. To me, we want to build something that, I'd say normies want to use, right? Because it tends to be the case that people that see this issue are the types of people who really love the idea of formalized mapping, and that the kind of thing appeals to us. But I think the value of structure is something that almost anybody could benefit from. So I'd like the idea that just like today, everybody has, lots of people have Substacks and they publish, and those people don't have to know much. They just need to know how to write, and create an essay and put it out there. I'd love to think that people could come here, say, and just about anybody could say, yeah, that's a question on which I have a viewpoint. I'm gonna publish my viewpoint here, and the system guides them to follow best practices, and best practices are really key to try to sort of benefit from the structure and introduce them to that idea of structure, and including linking to other questions and all those things in an organic way that's very very general audience friendly. So that's pretty important. So as far as what the formal structure looks like, here's that very, 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 very simple structure. Is everything's built around questions. So you have some question out there. And when I say question, I mean closed-ended question. Right now, we only have yes, no questions in our prototype, which you can kind of indicate a certainty factor by sliding that. So you can be 50-50, or you can be, 70% yes, or that kind of thing. So it's a little bit primitive. We like the idea of different question types. We just haven't gotten there yet. But so for now, just about everything can be mapped into a yes, no question, or we can kind of cheat and have like a scale of 0 to 100, kind of a question, how worried should we be about X on a scale of 0 to 100? And that yes, no slider we just use as if it was a 0 to 100 scale. And then you have individuals' viewpoints. And so the questions are universal, meaning anyone can publish on any question. And how you actually form your questions and all that is something I'm sure you'll wonder about. And we've got a lot to say about that. question refinement, who can change questions and when, all that kind of stuff we've done work with based on what we've learned. But anybody can publish a viewpoint. So Bill comes along and publishes a viewpoint against that question, and Jane can publish a viewpoint, and so can 100 other people, 1,000 other people. And anybody can publish a response to anybody else's viewpoint. And so you could have here, and this is where I messed up on my build.
I
So
might interrupt real quick.
Oh,
I'm only
please.
part of the presentation. Are other people seeing the full slide, or is that just me?
What are you saying? Sorry.
I can see the
I'm
formal
only seeing like
content
the top
structure.
left corner of the presentation. I don't know.
Sounds
if
like
that's
that's just you,
you.
Ben.
That's just me.
Oh.
Sweet. Then I'll deal with that. Keep going.
No, I see a full slide.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So just really quick on best practices. There's best practices for question formation. Try to guide the users and the community to, if you're going to build a question, keep these things in mind. Uh-oh, there's my real job trying to call me. Get rid of that. And then we have, guidelines for, or best practices for viewpoints. And the best practice would be stay focused on the question. Don't stray off the question. Include only things that are an explanation for why you take the position you take. So we use the words position and explanation very carefully. Your viewpoint is a combination of what's your answer to the question effectively, which is your position, and then what's your explanation for that position. We also allow for users to declare that they're not going to take a position and then explain that. And so that can be a way for people to say, I don't like this question because this doesn't take the, this frames the thing in a way I don't like. So they provide a pointer to some other question they like better, and people are free to do that. So, so then we get to responses, and the best practice for the response is there should be nothing in your response other than addressing what's in Bill's viewpoint. So this is the wrong place to give your independent analysis of this question, or, to talk about how upset you are with Bill about some other thing. This is 100% your response to Bill's viewpoint. So we try to really emphasize, stay in the structure, stay focused. And each of these, by the way, is like just a rich text type thing. So embedded pictures, graphs, links. So think like a Substack article. Each of these things, a viewpoint can be fully published like that. And then you have Bill's response, and these things weren't supposed to build yet, but I may as well talk about this. So generally any two people on a question, this is as far as the formal structure goes, and it stops there. So to the extent that the objective, and this goes back to QPark, is that, you immediately ask, well, what about response to response and response to response to response and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, the idea is that's the conversation. That's not where we're trying to go. What you want to do is, by examining this much structure and interacting through this much structure, you should be looking for what are the underlying disagreements that are being identified here, and split them off into separate questions, right? So somewhere here in my response to, in Jane's response to Bill, it's obvious that they disagree about, well, I'm not going to try to make examples on the fly. It always goes bad. So you guys, if anybody knows what I mean, you guys know what I mean. That there are things you disagree on, and those things can be put in the form of an independent question, and we can isolate that question, and we can deal with that question over here. So the point is, so we're extremely informal with that in our approach. You can basically highlight any piece of text from within your viewpoint or within your response and link it to a new question. And then of course you can invite the other person to join you on that question and go through the same kind of exercise. So the idea was, and QPark was very much this model, and it's all very much based on updates. So rather than have a conversation, the idea is Bill might see Jane's response and respond to that by modifying his viewpoint, because maybe something wasn't clear enough that she was responding to, or something like that. Or he might modify his response to Jane's viewpoint in order to address something, but always working toward identifying those underlying questions. So it was always updates on top of updates on top of updates. So anybody that was observing this interaction, whenever they come in, they're going to see the latest, greatest right on the surface. So I'm always seeing Bill's latest viewpoint, Jane's latest response to that viewpoint, Jane's latest viewpoint, Bill's latest response to that viewpoint. And that's really important is that I said we want all the good stuff on the surface, which means I don't want to have to dig through like 20 interactions between these two to try to piece together where Bill currently stands. I want to just come in and read, where does Bill currently stand? So every time Bill publishes his viewpoint, it's his complete viewpoint in its latest form. So he may update it 30 times. I don't care about those 30 times. I just want to see where is he today? But some people who are following the thing, are interested in each of those changes along the way. So we have tools to be able to go back and walk through history and see how all this evolves through time. All right, so that's the
Felix
basic.
as his hand raised.
Yeah, go.
Is
I'm sorry, I don't see those. Thanks.
If I'm correct, Felix, Felix.
Oh, Felix
I'm the only one. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, go.
So
yeah, and please just
thank
jump
you for
in.
presenting.
Yep.
Okay. So the viewpoints. Could you say exactly what the constraints are for the viewpoint and why those are not just arbitrary shaped replies?
I'm gonna pull up a best practices doc here just to scan and make sure I don't miss something important. But basically, the how did you just say it? What are the limitations, or what are the
constraints are for a viewpoint? Like, because this looks like people still have to like put their answer in a structure.
No, it's freeform. It's
freeform.
the only
freeform text, yeah.
Yeah,
Rich
freeform text.
texting.
Yeah,
The one thing I'd highlight, because they're all white lines, is that those lines drawn from Jane's viewpoint and Bill's response to the other questions, this would be the only kind of like implicit structure that we give, where it's the link to the question, which is tracked and kind of is the source of any future mapping that is done.
Yeah.
So those two white lines that bridge are the ability to like explicitly link those questions, but the body of the text themselves, they kind of look like wiki links with a little bit of coloring right now to differentiate them.
Yeah, you'll see it in just a few minutes.
Okay, so those colors, that the blue and gray ones, are arbitrary for this diagram right now. But
Yeah,
in
this is
reality,
just arbitrary.
they
I'm
don't
just
exist.
making Bill blue just
Okay.
for consistency here. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So anyway, what did we discover? We discovered as we were testing that what would happen is these responses would just start to blow up with they would just start to expand and expand and expand, because people would mimic having a conversation in here, by, Bill would read something in Jane's response that Bill didn't quite understand. So he'd basically write a note in his response. Well, Jane seems to be saying this, but whatever. And then Jane would write back, would update her side to say, well, I don't know where Bill got that because blah, blah, blah. And it was like, because you needed some way to work things out. Like, things are not obvious on the surface where these disagreements are. We needed a way to engage each other. But we knew that once we provided that, I mean, one of the things I did not want to let happen was that we started just having normal threads that just ran off in every direction. And because threads are where your focus ends up being completely lost and your structure ends up being completely lost. So we ended up with a solution to that. And obviously this can go however many levels deep, and you guys already know all that. So we had this formal content structure, and we said we need something else. So we invented something as an informal engagement. What do you want to call it? Like I think of it as lubricant for the formal structure, basically, because that's what it ends up being. It's an accessory. It's an accessory tool to the main tool. So it's very important. And we really try to emphasize there's the formal structure, and the end goal is to keep that formal structure up to date. But we have this little thing on the side, and we ended up calling these things LEMs, and they turn out to be really super cool to use in real life. So this is one of the things I really wanted to share with you guys, because you may be able to kind of leverage this idea potentially in some of what you're doing. And what this is a way for Bill and Jane to have a purpose-limited conversation between Bill and Jane, resulting in updates to this structure. And so the way we did this is we said, if I want to open a little communication channel, maybe we're in the middle of this question here, and I'm Bill for some reason, and I'm just not clear on what Jane meant by something she wrote in her response or whatever it is. And so I can open what we call a LEM, and it just stands for Little Engagement Module, because we don't have a better name for it right now. So it's like a little, it's a text chat basically is all it is. But what's really important about it is in order to open it up, I first have to say, what is my purpose for opening it up? And so my purpose might just be something very broad, like I want to explore this thing you said about whatever, or better understand what you mean by this. So that's why I'm opening it. So what that immediately causes me to do as a user is ask myself, why am I opening this? And it's funny what that does actually, because all of a sudden you find yourself, because in debate and in here too, you get this kind of knee-jerk need to react to things. It's like you read and react. And what this causes you to do is say, okay, what exactly am I trying to accomplish with this? Little communication. So you label it with that, and then you type your first message. And now that purpose is kind of sitting there as a guideline for the rest of that interaction. And our best practices say, and we want to build this into the tool more formally with these reminders is, as that conversation progresses, constantly check back to that purpose. And if you find that you're being pulled to say something else that's no longer kind of coherent with that purpose, then open another lem. You figure out what that new purpose is and open another lem. And what Shane and I found out when we first thought of this idea, we opened just a Word document and we just started saying, let's just create lems in this document and only interact through them. And we would just be popping off all these new lems with all these different paths. But the pressure that the idea within this tool is drive these things to closure, right? Like they were open for a purpose, try to accomplish that purpose and then close it. And then we have a very simple little mechanic on them that makes them like a little tennis match. So
I think that's important to, if you're going to explain that, go, because I was just on the top of my mind.
Yeah. So as soon as I create the thing, it shows up on Shane's to-do list. We have kind of like a to-do list manager in the system. And he says, oh, I got a lem from Paul on this question. I see what the purpose is. He goes in there and looks at it. He decides to respond to me. And then he says, I'm done. And what he's basically saying is, I'm done for now. The ball's back in your court on this little conversation we're having. And so now it pops back up in my inbox. And at some point, I find myself saying, well, I think we're good with this one. And we've kind of had this little shorthand now where we say lem out. But basically, I'm saying, I'm done. I'm good.
Done for good.
Yep. And then so I click that thing is done. Then he comes in, and if he agrees we're done, he also says he's done and that thing's closed. So we both agreed that we're done on the same content, right? Nobody can sneak something in there. And the discipline again is whatever we accomplished in that lem, now, what do we need? What should we be doing back in the formal structure, right? Now that I better understand this thing that I wanted to explore, what do I do back here in terms of updating my response or changing my viewpoint some or whatever? And all I can tell you is this is a thing that as of now, you really have to exercise the discipline to do it right, because obviously you can do anything you want with these tools. But if you follow that discipline of really thinking purpose, we had this funny moment where we realized, in conversation, one of the things we're trying to fix is that in conversation, there's 100 places you could go and you have to pick one, right? Because you can only say one thing at a time. So it's always this constant trade-offs, and especially live in a dynamic conversation, we don't make those decisions very wisely. Usually we make them in a very reactive way. What we started to discover with LEMS is we had the opposite problem, which is we could go everywhere. Like they allowed us to do everything we wanted to do, but we didn't have time for that or energy for that. So all of a sudden you start really thinking to yourself, what is and isn't worth the engagement? Like what really are my priorities here? And we'd also find ourselves slipping in to it, because it's informal. Yes, you're supposed to stay on that purpose, but we'd say, okay, I know I'm getting a little off this, but what about this? And then you'd kind of have this energy to come back to the purpose. But they end up serving all kinds of purposes. So for example, this ended up being our invitation mechanic. So I create a question. I may publish my viewpoint on the question. I may not yet. And I can send a lem over, because these lems are in question context, send a lem over to Shane, and it's called, what's the purpose? It's inviting you to join me on this question. And, you know, he can say, I don't know if I have time for that. And I can say, oh, come on, sure you do. And you know what I mean? You can have that little informal
Yeah.
conversation in the context of that invitation.
I liked how it in that
mhm.
same vein, when you're having a discussion disagreement on one question, it also becomes a way to propose potential other questions in advance, where you're like, oh, hey, do you think this would be a good question? And you get a bit of buy-in and agreement, alignment in advance, instead of just like, hey, here's a question that clearly suits my needs, like come join me, coward, and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So Mark Antoine has his hand up.
No, just to be sure,
Yeah.
you present the LEM as a two-person conversation. Is it always two persons? Is that
It
a
can
constraint?
be that, no, there's zero reason it has to be. We're kind of, one interesting thing about this model is we're really thinking classrooms right now for a number of different reasons and some input that we've gotten to. And it was very easy to imagine that, you know, two students who are engaged on a disagreement as part of a class here or exploring some area of disagreement, it'd be very easy for the teacher to step in, a professor to step in as a moderator. So a moderator stepping in other people's LEMs is one thing. There's absolutely no reason we couldn't invite any other users to join us.
Okay, good.
So you can absolutely have multi-party LEMs. This tool doesn't support that now in a one-on-one, but what we did was we knew we had another problem we were simultaneously solving with question formation, which I'm sure is familiar to you guys, which is, you know, well, there's a lot of challenges in getting that question right, and pinpointing a disagreement and all those things. And it's amazing sometimes what I could read something and say, well, how could that possibly be unambiguous or ambiguous? And then someone else will come in and point out something I hadn't even thought of, or some scope that I hadn't specified, or whatever it is. And so we repurposed the LEM for the purpose of question refinement. So now when I create a question, anyone else right now in our system can come in and say, and point out, hey, you know, did you mean to, you're asking about a law. Are you talking specifically about the United States here? Or are you talking about generally anywhere? And I go, oh yeah, good point. So, you know, they open that LEM. What, you know, do you want to specify jurisdiction is the purpose of the LEM? And I say, yeah, great point. Fixed it. LEM out, and we're done with that little LEM, you know?
Right.
So, and that one can be multi-user. So
yeah, anyone can hop into the question refinement, just any user right now. There's one admin, which is the person kind of who created the question. Whereas what we're kind of seeing here is when you're on that specific screen between two people, we do limit it to those two people there. So kind of right now it's everyone or two people, but in theory,
right.
Those lines can start to
and
be
people
blurred.
have talked about like I immediately, of course, I'm reading everything that happens in the system and I'm wanting to jump in on everything.
Yeah.
And I think people have appreciated that there's something special about a one-on-one. You know, there's a chemistry between any two people, and especially with this kind of informal LEM thing. I'm having a series of individual conversations with people about gendered language in informal documentation right now in the system. And it's funny because it's a different conversation. I'm older than most of these people, and I'm getting a different take. And you know, you're kind of probing each other a little bit with these LEMs sometimes to, well, what about this case? And what would you do with this? And there's some danger, and I've fallen into this trap a lot, of the LEMs just being their own thing and forgetting to go back to the formal structure. That's a thing that we're really trying to reemphasize. But
we'll
also,
embed that shortly. I think that's going to be a nice thing to have that like officially into the LEM timeline, where you can send a message, but it's also like, hey, you can link the thing that you're actually doing, the outcome, to tighten that loop. But
yeah,
we
and actually some
that.
kind of checklist. Is there anything you need to do here, and kind of put it on the to-do list and make it formal so you don't forget. But all right, so that's the general idea. We love this LEM thing, and this is one thing I really just wanted to share with you guys. But generally speaking, the software that we currently have today is there's a way too big of a learning curve on it. So this is not like jump in and immediately kind of know what to do. And that's mainly because we're constantly under construction, and we're very much in an engineering mindset first, and we'll worry about style and accessibility once we know what it is actually going to be. So we'll be like, there should be a way to do this. And Shane will throw a button on that does that. And we all know what that button does.
Right.
And we use it every day and don't think about it. And then a new person comes in and goes, how the heck do you do this? And, you know, so
it's that button there. How didn't you know that?
yeah, we go to the button.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's just important because I'm inviting you in. We often hear, oh, this isn't very intuitive. Yes, we know it's not very intuitive. We're inviting people now that understand what we're trying to do. And seeing how that works, and we have every intention of making it prettier and making it more consistent and that kind of thing. So it's not as bad maybe as I just described. Shane, I think it's awesome. Good job, bud. All right, and we have and we have tight loops. I built QPark, by the way, and I had to train myself I had to learn like React and all this stuff. I didn't know any of this stuff in order to do it. So having Shane is like a miracle, because things that would have taken me like 2 weeks to figure out how to do, he just does like before I've finished asking for them. It's like, you mean like this? And I turn it on and there it is. And I go, wow, that's amazing. All right. So, tight loops of iteration here. So LEMS, we started this 3 months ago. We really started testing, and LEMS didn't exist. And now they're like central. So this is really tight loops of iteration, and a little bit of a growing community already. We had 2 people that joined us that were interested in the QPark thing originally, and they just refused to leave. We're just like constantly in there trying new things and exploring new ideas. And one of them's in there like breaking down everything about the Arizona voting thing. And we've got some guy in there really hoping to find somebody to argue what is it? Predestination in a Calvinist tradition and something or other. He hasn't found. He's trying to get his church buddies in there to do it. So we're kind of slowly growing this community, and it's neat because you get a lot of different dynamics of different one-on-one interactions. What are we learning? Very interesting results in personal use. I can already point to multiple things that that I have, interaction ways in which I've changed my mind that I truly don't believe would have happened anywhere else. So, I mean, more so than QPark, which did not work like I had hoped it would work. This thing's really working. Like, and it's really just a matter to me of how much can we get people here, because, I have the advantage of understanding very much the objectives and how it's meant to be used and those kind of things. But there are interactions that we've had. There's something about that structure that if somebody creates the question that really targets the core disagreement, and everybody in the world is watching for, am I going to address that core disagreement or not? And then when I do, now I'm kind of stuck on that island of that core disagreement, and I have to stay there. And if I don't have a strong argument there, it becomes pretty obvious. So there's been some interesting things, and I'd say one thing on which I definitely changed my mind, actually, in a way I would be surprised. I was surprised to have done. And another thing that's happened more frequently, where I wouldn't say I've changed my mind, but I've gained a huge appreciation for the people that disagreed with me that I didn't have before. Like, I did not realize how I assumed their argument was shallow, because if their argument was deep, it would have been my argument, and then I realized, oh no, they have their own whole deep argument, right? This does not apply to the stuff I'm debating with you, Shane, by the way.
Oh yeah, of course not.
The building the right culture seems absolutely key. And we absolutely, I'm hoping the dynamic is the tool allows for productive engagement. So it's going to attract people that enjoy productive engagement, which is going to mean you're going to see a lot of good results there, which is going to draw even more people that like productive engagement. And that's good, because if this could be poisoned. There's risk that this becomes populated with all people who see the world a certain way, and people don't feel comfortable when they come in. So we're trying to maintain this idea of being open and nice to each other and respectful and that kind of thing. But a wide variety of personalities definitely impacts use. We found that things that seem on the surface very simple to me, like some of those best practices, just don't kind of fit in some people's heads, or it takes multiple times to get it. And vice versa. There's things that, as I said, don't make a lot of sense to me. And then I realized, wow, there's a lot more to that than I thought. Where are we? We are looking at, we have a few opportunities sort of to help with some relatively high profile disagreements in the world, sort of facilitate them. And I think that's something if this tool doesn't end up doing really well with general audience, I think there's a huge potential for people to use it sort of like that classroom environment to help uh, people who aren't familiar with the structure work their disagreement through the structure. It's really funny if you try to take a debate. We've several times tried to take a debate and retroactively map it into the structure. It's a nightmare. Whereas if you developed it through the structure, it's automatically clean. And so I love the idea of taking people and working back and forth between people that disagree and helping them build their disagreement through this structure. But we're really focused on continuing to evolve the tool. And as I said, maybe we sort of thought, you know what we should do? We should just carve off a educational version of this and see if we could get some people to use it in classes. And that might be a focus where we get a lot, we do a lot of good in the shorter term versus trying to get something going in more of a general public kind of a scenario, because you got the captured audience of those students. So all you got to do is convince the professor, and that's great. So that's sort of that. And then I can pop this system up here. Get rid of those. I don't care. See my bookmarks. So this is, I'm going to make this a very brief thing, because what I really just want to invite you guys to do is to come in. But when I open this thing today, I'm looking at this thing live. I have a to-do list, and that to-do list is organized around the questions that I'm currently involved in. It's organized around 3 basic verbs, which is read, write, and engage. So there's a follow system in this tool. So I could find something like, let's go with the Lions in the Super Bowl. There's a winner. So our Lions going to the Super Bowl. If I go back and
this one was funny, actually.
I just opened that question. I was the only one who ever published on this viewpoint. I last published 3 days ago. When I did publish, if I bring up my viewpoint, so now it's Paul's viewpoint on this question, it's 0% yes, and that's because they lost. So they're not going to the Super Bowl. But if I turn on history and looked at my viewpoint just a couple hours earlier, my viewpoint was, hell yeah, we're going to the Super Bowl because I believe in, well, whatever. Turned out a couple hours later, I changed my mind. They're not going to the Super Bowl. So that's an example of an evolving viewpoint through time. But I could find questions where there's much more engagement, such as the one I put out here just to try to get everybody into it, which is about, let's use some of our tags. So I could come up here and say, I could tag it to XU. And all these little tools are primitive. Like we said, our goal is grow the user community and then build the, what do you call them, quality of life tools as they start to be demanded. So, so some of these things are, so I've got, is XU a worthwhile project, is a question up here. And if I pop that one open, I'm going to see multiple viewpoints from multiple people as these individual tiles. And from here, I can engage with any of these people by clicking this little logo. So I want myself to engage with, let's say, Shane. So I click the same logo on Shane, and now I've got me and Shane engaged on this question. As it turns out, Shane has not published a viewpoint, and therefore I have nothing to respond to. What's that?
I said it's suspect. I haven't published on this question yet.
Yeah, I mean, I got to find someone that did. But this is where I can open that lem to Shane and say, inviting you to participate, have some pride in your system, Shane. So I created that lem that now exists here. I'm inviting Shane to participate. This is that little informal communication tool. I say, come on, man. Put in images, whatever links, whatever I want to do here. This is just like a text thing. And now Shane's got that on his to-do list to respond to me on this lem. And here's my little status where I say, I'm done for now. So this thing is off my radar until I get a response back from Shane. So that's a quick little look at how we get into that sort of lem status. Shane, what was our big one that we went forever on?
The dark pattern one?
Oh, no. Yeah, that one.
I think it's called deceptive design on the, I can
right.
give it a
Yeah.
bottom one. It's like it's one of the earliest questions now. Should deceptive design patterns on the internet be illegal?
All right. So this is one where
The answer is yes, if anyone was wondering. No, I'm kidding.
All right. So here we have an interaction between me and Shane. Here's and this has definitely not been cleaned up for a while, but this is where, you know, I can read Shane's viewpoint on the question, 100% yes. I'm on the other side, and here is my explanation on the right. When I get to the bottom of Shane's explanation, here's my response to him, and vice versa down here. And then we had this many lems to dig and dig and dig and dig into what was going on here. And it was interesting because confess I come from a libertarian worldview in a lot of ways. And one of the things I realized as a result of all this, just to tell you a quick story, is how that worldview was causing me to question the idea of legality in a way that just made no sense to Shane whatsoever. So we're in many ways
That was a
talking
big one.
past each other. What's that?
I said, yeah, that was a big, just how much was loaded in that term. And this was before we had the question refinement idea. So we didn't align on this. And I came in hot with 100% yes. And then clearly that one term ended up mattering.
Yeah, it took us a little while to get there, but the insights and the exchange we had along the way was super valuable. But anyway, so the problem with showing you any existing content, two problems with it. One is that because we're playing, we're not the ideal participants. It's a little, and because the system is constantly evolving, the further you go back, we'll have discovered something and then we'll like, okay, let's change the system based on that. And then we'll move forward. So we leave a lot of clutter behind us. But that's not to say that anybody can't come into this question and, as a few other people have done, participate and weigh in. So we have a million ideas for what to do next with this, but I think I've walked through what the structure is, how those lems play in, and where we basically are with the project. And I truly think the best way, this does not demo well, because one of the things that we go back to, I like to go back to the idea that this facilitates slow, methodical progress is what this does in disagreements. This is not like jump in for 2 hours and you've solved something. It's you're constantly pushing the ball forward, but you're pushing it forward in a very productive way. So it's not easy to sit down, you know, and go, I'm going to make a fake debate and show you one person and then log in as the other person. And because it's just an artificial feel. That's not what it actually feels like to use it. It's better to come in and just actually use it. Ideally, find something you actually care about, create the question that focuses on that, try to pull some other people in, or bring your quote unquote opponent or debate partner or whatever you want to call it to the system with you. And one of the nice things about those lems is we'll sit and watch the activity in the system. And as we watch the activity, I'll make observations and then use lems to have conversations about usage of the system. So we end up with some good engagement there. Yes, I'm done talking. Go.
I'm wondering, when y'all realize that there's a term like legal in there and you each had different interpretations of it, do you ever go back and change the main claim at the top to be?
Yeah, you can. And we're careful about using question instead of claim, but I understand the interchangeability. So what we currently have, we have a design in the bag for this, because there is a big challenge when anyone's allowed to publish against something and then the question can be changed out from underneath them. So we have identified a concept of a question stakeholder, because at first what we did is said, if you don't like this question, create the question you like better and point to it. And then, but it just became way too messy. Like people were all over the map and everybody was lost. And the truth is, this really is one question, and sometimes it's appropriate just to tune that question, to remove ambiguity, to define terms, to do things like that. So in this case, I said, is EXU a worthwhile project? I said, worthwhile is intentionally subjective, right? Some people say, well, what do you mean by worthwhile? I'm saying, I'm leaving that subjective. You know, that's I'm doing that on purpose. So anyway, going to what you said, this refinement tab on the question, each question has a refinement tab, a viewpoints tab, and an overview tab. On that refinement tab, we can see, I can see that I am the question stakeholder. And currently, right now, whoever created it is a stakeholder, and the stakeholder can change it. What our vision is that as people publish, as time goes by and people publish, they become stakeholders on the question. And in order to change the question, you need some majority of the stakeholders. So you're kind of weighted stakeholders. The person that creates it has a lot of weight, but if they create it, never do anything, and a bunch of people do a bunch of work on it, those people's weight has now overcome this person who created it. So it's not going to be a perfect system, but it'll be, what we want to do is make it really easy to change early on before a lot of activity has happened.
Yeah.
But as more and more activity accumulates, you can still change it, but there's a higher barrier to change it. So as the stakeholder, I can just come in and change this question any way I want currently. But that's the long-term and short-term answer.
You mentioned you left worthwhile being intentionally vague. Is your thought that eventually y'all would change that question or multiple questions to be more specific, or do you think that it's answerable leaving
No,
that
what
out?
I'm saying is that I know that worthwhile to you might mean something different than worthwhile to me, and I'm good with that on this question. If you know, this is
Yeah,
this is
you're
this is a
basically saying
soft question, right?
On this question, you're allowing stakeholders to develop what they mean by worthwhile as part of their viewpoint.
That's
which
right.
is
Right.
Yeah. So we had a famous, I mean, these are all the things you
The
discover.
con man one is a good example of this. Is that
we
where you're
both go in
going?
the same
Okay.
way. Yeah. So we started out the Elon Musk a con man, right? Is Elon Musk a con man?
The
And
most troublesome left to find on purpose.
oh my goodness, this thing drove me crazy. I left con man to undefined on purpose.
Can't ever leave con
I
man
ended up,
undefined.
was it Stephen? I can't remember now. I think it was Stephen. And one of the things we have to do here is really highlight these. Sorry, I can't read and talk at the same time.
Stephen went in. This is a long explanation.
Yeah, well, Steve and I were going at it a little bit on this one, but and Elon Musk means this guy. Everybody knows who that is. Might we with Biat, but somewhere along the line, we ended up, I got so frustrated that I said, all right, obviously to be a con man, you have to know that you're conning people. You can't just accidentally, and I see expressions that say that's not true, right? So I create the question about does
knowing intent. Right,
yeah,
right.
is knowing someone's intent required for declaring them a con man here? So and obviously I can't define con man because this is part of the definition of con man, and somehow, much to my surprise, we ended up having a real I'm sure there's a lot of lems on this discussion on whether or not that's part of the term con man. As it turns out, you know, just people use language differently in ways that sometimes surprise us. And so I learned something as a result of all this, I guess is all I can say. But certainly it's better if you can nail down the terms, but sometimes even nailing down the terms, well, what do you do that with? You do that with other terms. People better understand those terms the same too. So you're never going to completely drive out ambiguity, but the goal is, and this is a best practice, is try to do whatever you can. When I create a question, I have a place for my question text. And then what we ended up just calling clarification is the best practice says what should go in this box, anything that helps people see that question the same way as other people. That's basically the idea. So again, imperfect science, but this is, you kind of hopefully get the feel here for what I mean by trying to bring in a general audience. Is we want to simple to follow practices without a lot of, because you could have a box for scope, a box for definitions. You could have multiple different definitions and have each term individually defined and share those definitions with other questions. I mean, as a data modeler, I think of all these connections and things that are possible. And what we try to do is just bring it down to the minimum necessary structure in order to be successful. So we just say, what goes in this box? Anything that helps people see the question the same way. So
that kind
anyway.
of speaks to the that original like better question mechanic that you kind of mentioned in passing, where we can link to questions, but we're like, well, what happens when I come to a question? I'm like, oh, you know what? Paul wants to keep con man undefined, but I think that's actually like a stupid conversation to have, or there's some facet that's missing. And so I make a competing question where I give a very strict definition of con man, and then having this linking mechanic that allows those two to kind of orbit each other, but not necessarily like overlap in a way.
Exactly.
Was something that we're kind of discussing as well.
Right. So somebody coming in and discovering the one question might say, oh, that's, you found a question that looks interesting to you, but guess what? There's a lot of community focus and activity on this question that others have linked from here that, then I might read and go, oh no, that is actually what I care more about. So total user freedom. Anybody can create any question they want. They can engage on any question they want, but trying to use pointers and I don't want to say peer pressure, but activity and appreciation mechanic, which actually isn't even in here yet, to try to elevate the things that are the most useful to the most people to kind of glow brighter than everything else so that, it can help people decide what might be worth their attention. And, ideally in like a big picture, knock it out of the court success here, you would have, experts in their field that are using this place to keep people up to date on what their viewpoints are on all the important things. And so when my position on maybe some political thing depends on my evaluation of a somewhat technical topic, maybe something like climate change, I might link my political viewpoint on something to somebody else's explanation as or viewpoint on a particular aspect of climate change as where I'm drawing. Am I an expert on all these things? Of course not. But if you want to know what I think about this, I'm sort of proxying that to this person who seems most credible to me. And so you kind of have those interconnected webs of anybody's question could be pulled into anybody else's viewpoint. Um, and so there's a lot of interesting things that go with that in terms of mapping and in terms of flow. You'll notice we haven't done anything graphical yet. I can't bring up a screen and see the connected questions. We haven't done any of that. We know we probably will, but we're really focusing on, put it this way, there's times when I've said it would be nice to see those connections just as a quick map. And we need a better way to be able to follow your breadcrumb trails. If you walk through 6 questions and kind of find your way back home or remember why you're here in the first place. Things like that we know we're going to need, but our focus is content and structure, or not content and structure first. And then we'll let wait till we actually find ourselves going, we can't live without some graphical tool. And then let's build the graphical tool at that point to suit whatever it is we're suffering with. So,
yeah, and I came at it from a big Obsidian user and fell into this kind of space maybe in the last couple of years. Yeah, there you go. Hearing about them, learning about it, like Rome and stuff, and loving that idea. And I think Paul convinced me about this, starting with the engagement and really narrowing down what does it kind of feel like? Because I was obsessed with I want to see the map. Show me. If I can't see the graph, it doesn't exist basically. But nailed me down on the value of letting engagement drive that, and then now looking at a point where we're oh yeah, hey, we're coming up on ways to add the most value by embedding that map in different contexts to orient people, but still have having engagement be the first thing in the context of a single question.
Yeah, I see people out there that are great explainers, just in the media in general, in whatever their subject matter is. And I think if you said, hey, come in and use this tool, first what you do is drag and drop a question, and then you create an arrow to your underlying thing, whatever. As soon as you just lose 95% of the people as soon as it's about connecting things together that have abstract meanings, whatever. So to me, you got a better chance of going, here's a question. You're the expert on that. Take a position, and then just your next step is just explain your position. That's it. It's that's natural. And then in so doing, if you want to take advantage of some other thing you've already explained, we'll link that in. Oh, I haven't talked about linking. So let's say that in my explanation for why this is a worthwhile project, I want to reference this question here. So unfortunately, I'll open that in another tab. So on every question, we've got just a little copy link here. So I can hold on to that link in my clipboard. And then I'm going to go into here and modify my my viewpoint. I opened up the Paul on Shane view, but I'm going to modify my viewpoint, and I'm going to say, obviously, this is worthwhile. Boy, I can't even type. Look at this example. So I can just take any piece of my text, over paste. I'm going to just control Ving that link I just put on. And now I've got my link to some other question in the system. So that's how simple the linking is. I could do that from here. I could do that from a response. I could have a viewpoint that's nothing but a whole bunch of links to all the underlying questions that support it. But it's very natural. It's just like, HTML links, and that's all there is to it. And in fact, I could just embed all that I just copied and pasted is just this link from up here. So you could embed a link to this whole conversation between me and Shane into a Twitter conversation and say, oh, these guys are actually having a great debate about that, and just paste that link. So you're internally linking the same way you would externally link. And it's just, to me, it's just natural.
But the purple with the little square icon is the officially tracked link that would be used to derive the graph when we, or any map when we do make it. So it is tracked separately compared to like just a basic blue URL, like, or any old hyperlink.
So anyone reading my viewpoint is going to see that and jump to that question. We have some things we have in the very near term future of sort of maintaining user context when you go from question to question. So if I'm going from my link to that question, you would be landing on my viewpoint on that question. Or if I was looking at Shane versus me on one question, I'd link to Shane versus me on the other question, and things like that. But you can adopt other people's viewpoints. There's a lot of little things I'm not going over that you can kind of see when you start to play around. This is, someone did the classic, are you obligated to save a drowning child thing in here. And we went a little crazy on that one. And I felt like they kept grasping at caveats in the scenario. So I tried to create a scenario that removed all those caveats. And so that's what this particular question is. And here we are in refinement, talking about simplifying the question to remove all stupid caveats in the idea, which I might have been a little frustrated when I wrote that. And so you can see I've had a little conversation with Shane and Seth, both about how I can make this question more effective for what I'm doing. So here's an example of one of those embedded lems, just for the purpose of helping us get a question that accomplishes what I wanted to accomplish before anybody's even published viewpoints on it. One of the cool ideas we have right now is sort of a question incubator, where it's not an official question. I could actually go to Shane and say, hey, I'm interested in debating this question with you. Here's what I have in mind. And we get to work it together before it first gets born or published to the world. And at that point, we're 50-50 stakeholders on it. So I can't change it from under him, and he can't change it from under me. That's a kind of a neat idea that we're working on too. So
nice.
Lots of stuff. Let me just leave it to questions, because like I said, we could just go on and on and on.
There's a lot I like in there. There's a lot I do very differently, but there's a lot I like. The LEM idea, I think, is extremely solid. I mean, I've been doing side conversations, but I think the making them very bounded is excellent. I haven't thought about doing it exactly that way, and it's clearly a great thing.
Change the world.
Structure,
right?
the structure, the basic structure, I have issues with, if only because I have a different purpose. I think for the purpose you described, like classrooms and stuff, I think it's excellent. It will handle most cases. I think it's brilliant. I worry about if you draw this loose on a population, there's going to be a lot of viewpoints and responses, and how do you deduplicate? And how do you group similar viewpoints? That's my concern, but that's because it's a different use case. For your use case, I think you've come up with something that I has enormous value. And kudos from me anyway.
Thanks. Thank you.
First comment.
Would you say
Told
that because you mentioned you were an advocate of a more formalized structure?
Correct.
So if you said, for our purpose, it might be suited. What if you could, if you have it so succinct, what is your purpose? Would it be like universal truth or like some kind of different context, or just to clarify that a bit? I'd be curious.
Deliberative democracy.
Right.
If Bentley, or I assume you put the video on YouTube. I thought last time, was that right? Or whoever puts video on YouTube.
Yeah.
Often Bentley, yes.
If we just tack that email address in there so everybody has it, because that would be the email to ask for a user ID. We're still doling those out.
Post that in the chat just to make sure I spell it correctly.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. So now it's on the video too, but I will. It's been a while since I've been in Zoom. There it is. Thank you. And we've got a Discord server where we're all talking about these things all the time. We had a very interesting little talk yesterday. I was unbeknownst to myself, completely unbeknownst to myself, I was really getting under the skin of a person who felt very strongly about their viewpoint, and I was picking and picking and picking. And it was because I was testing the system and testing the process, and also because I thought they were wrong, and I'm stubborn. But anyway, it was funny because we actually had a verbal debate in Discord, and I'm sure there's a lot of confirmation bias going on here, but I swear it was higher quality and more productive because of the stage we had set here, and even some of the kind of just being used to the idea of thinking through things this way. We were just trying to, our whole effort was to just try to hone in on what is this underlying thing? Where are we disconnecting on this thing? And we were able to get there in a way that, similar to how Shane and I did through a bunch of lems on a couple of questions, we were able to do it in a conversation. And I thought, would I have done that if we hadn't done sort of all this prep work to begin with, to kind of start to narrow down where the disagreement was, but also just kind of established this mindset of thinking structurally. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. I was there. Timothy has his hand up.
Oh, go. Oh, good. Hi,
Yeah.
Timothy.
Hi. Yeah, I have lots of thoughts. I don't know. They'll be disorganized, so I'll try to limit to a few.
You're the one that was driving earlier, right? You're the
yeah, I was the one driving.
Okay.
I've gotten
great.
Well, one angle on this is, I guess, that on the question of formalization versus keeping it more informal.
Yeah.
I think you've really hit on one of the great trade-offs, which is, doing it conversationally and informally. You really get people to engage more. You get, there's a lot that can be gotten out of this. On the other side, it gets really hard to scale, right? That the formalization is a lot about scaling and about dealing with these things. Sure, it's cool in a group to work with different definitions and maybe talk about the different definitions or whatever. But when you want to scale it to a global knowledge base, we've spent a lot of time just on the part of what is a definition? How can we form definitions? What do you do when a definition evolves? What do you do when a conversation involves, one example we often use is feminism, or communism, and it's, who's communism? Whose definition of feminism? Feminism
absolutely.
From
Absolutely.
what perspective?
Yep.
So there's some interesting discussions we've had on that. I almost feel that sort of thing would destroy what you've built here. So I don't know where you'll find that sort of balance. Another angle on this is, and I think you've hit on another benefit of this, is learning from other people and learning how other people are actually can be just as reasonable as you, right? Learning to respect people whose opinions differ from you. These are the things you get out of conversation, and a graph won't really give you that.
Right.
There's a group, it's been a few years now, so we've lost touch with them, but one of our early members was a group that was building something. They changed their name to Polarizer. They went through some different names. I'm looking here in our yeah, we
sounds
did.
like the opposite.
We weren't happy with the outcome with the name they chose. They were happy with it. We were kind of, I'm not so sure, but their mission was parallel to yours in a lot of ways. It was more focused on conversation and debate between people, but their goal specifically was to provide a safe place for debate, where people could learn from each other, could come to conclusions, and then somehow promote those conclusions to the world as being good examples of thinking through this particular subject. And so like their thinking was that a debate had to stay on a specific topic. It was always one-on-one. One of the main concerns they had, and this is something I've seen you haven't expressed any thought about so far, which is, how do you do this in public and avoid all the problems of trolling, of badgering, bullying, people who just want to get in the way and that sort of thing. And so they, like, their main feature set was around, the encounter was one-on-one, and it was voluntary, and you could end it at any time and never have to talk to that person again. Right. Even in a school setting, I would imagine that you're going to have people at different levels of willingness to engage. Those people who you mentioned who are going to jump into every single person's discussion is stay out. We just want and maybe some people who are bullies or just want to throw a monkey. How is that phrase? Monkey.
Yeah, it's a monkey wrench.
Okay.
Throw a wrench.
I've never seen one, but I hear they can really mess things up.
Yeah. So there's those kind of questions that go through my head.
A couple of things that made me think about that might be useful to share. So on the universality, that is definitely something that we very specifically said we're not going to try for that. We're going to try for, I kind of mentioned it before. We're gonna let there be a mess, but let the good stuff rise. I think is. And individuality ends up being key. I mean, you cannot, I don't think, like Kyle to me is a perfect illustration of when you try to build like one structure that demonstrates pro and one that con. It's like, no, it's just a jumble of a million things, because each individual, a viewpoint is almost like a fingerprint on an issue. It's like there's subtleties. I may have the same reasons that Shane has for something, but I'm going to express them differently. I'm going to emphasize different parts. I'm going to use different references, and I think that's just, I just don't think it can be done, basically. So there's a real sense of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good with this. I'm trying to, and there's a little bit of a camel's nose under the tent thing that I feel like we can kind of pull people lure them into structure with an easy glide path. And then they start to, it's helpful if I break my argument up into 3 pieces. That's where I was breaking down with Q Park, because I was trying to get everybody to see ahead of time. No, don't you see how you can compartmentalize this disagreement in pieces, and wanting them to just basically become data modelers, which is what I originally was, become argument modelers before they even start. And it's like, no, here we're really just going, as long as you stay focused on this thing, write whatever you want. You can go 3 or 4 levels deep. You don't have to build the building blocks perfectly. Just express yourself. And then when somebody challenges you, you'll start to find, we really actually disagree about this little piece. So just take that little piece out. You don't have to map everything. Just map the piece you disagree about. That's the important part. Isolate that and take that aside. So anyway, universality is we decided to come at it from precisely the other side. And just not even sort of give up on universality. So we'll see where that leads. As far as trolls and all that stuff, we've got a million ideas about where this could go in its best implementation. If we're lucky enough that we have enough users that we find that kind of thing. I mean, it starts with block buttons and mute buttons, and which we actually already have. We've already needed with just a few people here, because my to-do list is just piling up. We need to be able to, I haven't done it yet, but you can mute users, you can mute questions you don't care about, you can mute users on questions you don't care about, you can mute individual lems, you can follow individual lems. So all that, Shane has managed to build all that into here. So I think individual choice is pretty key when it comes to that stuff. I love the idea, if this was to expand to a certain threshold, of thinking of it almost like a community and almost like a club, and everybody pays a little dues to be in the club and to use the tool as a way of screening out the bots and the trolls, because we're all here for for the value of being able to work together as sort of a growing collective of people who rely on each other to hone each other's arguments and link each other's arguments. And I believe that really good content will naturally develop here if people really follow the process and if we get the right people in. And then I love the idea of having those dues flow back out based on the appreciation system. It's like, whoever's writing the explanations, that everybody's like, yes, thank you. Finally, somebody just like laid this thing out for me in an understandable way. Big stars to you. Some portion of their dues go to that person that month or whatever. And it's kind of like there's an incentive system to come in and actually help people. So I that's sort of a pie in the sky future dream idea. But one of the benefits of that is that if you ask people to put just even a little bit of skin in the game, you get rid of a lot of trolls. But then there's like sort of unintentional trolls. We may already have, no, we don't. Me is what
No.
Some people might consider me a troll to some extent already. And that's just, someone's got a lot of opinions, or I was getting on one person's case the other day because they're really interested in alternative voting methods. And that's something we explored in here a bit. And I learned a lot through that. But we had somebody new come in and say, I'm interested in how parties affect voting. And of course, that person that's interested in voting methods immediately came into question refinement and said, well, doesn't it matter what the voting method is? Shouldn't you bring voting method into this? And I'm thinking, oh, you're hijacking his party's question. But then everybody else said, no, shut up, Paul. That is an interesting thing. Maybe he does want to modify his question. So there's a lot of give and take on that stuff, but it's just like real life. It's just like real life. You can have a conversation in a room full of people, and there might be someone there that you wish would shut up so that somebody else could talk. And it's at some point, at least here you have a mute button. So long answer to that. But in the school setting, I think that we picture that very tight circles. At least right now, I picture, let's say a college decided to take this, you'd create a room, and that room is a box where all its questions live independently of the rest of the world. So that is, that would be very much under the teachers or professors' watchful eye in terms of if any student is being too
definitely scared of those bigger
Yeah.
issues, and education does seem to cut through a lot of them.
Yeah, it really does.
Mark has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to formulate that question, but there's a lot there I like. There's a lot where I think I bring it in a totally different direction, but maybe building on it, because I can totally see multiple stage where we start with these very personal things, because I totally believe in the value of these personal things, and then see if we can distill them into something more abstract, right?
Funny, yeah.
And one of the many hats I wear, one of the many drums I beat continuously in this group is this needs to be a protocol, and an open protocol, so we can all build on one another's work and exchange and and so how do you feel about sharing data, sharing approaches. I put the question of open source, sharing ideas. Like, I want to build in this. I think there's great ideas there. I want to build in this. How proprietary do you feel about some of the concepts in there? Like, now I see you've come up with the LEM idea. It's good. I would want to use it, honestly. What would be a fair arrangement for that? Because,
Well, whatever you just heard that you can use, because we didn't, we are not taking an approach of trying to protect any intellectual property in anything we're developing here.
Neither am I, but I want to be sure that thank you first for that.
And honestly, the LEMs in particular, I mean, I think there's an opportunity there. That thing
Definitely.
just as a concept,
No.
independent of any tool, is pretty neat. Like, it's amazing what happens
but
with
I
that
also
little twist.
I
What's
also
that?
want to absolutely great to hear. But I also want to think, okay, what can I do to bring this further in the directions I believe in? And,
well, let's talk about that a little bit more, maybe offline, and Shane and I could talk. Shane and I are officially partnered in this effort. And
today is crazy for me. I'll have to bow out, by the way.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but at some point, I mean, you've got my email
let's
address.
definitely continue that conversation. I think you have my email. If not, I'll just put it in the chat, and let's keep that up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, it's just something else I was reminded of from what just happened about personalities and what a big deal that was. And I had that on the slide, but even like Shane and I want to get to the bottom of certain types of political disagreements, certain types of very specific scientific disagreements, those kind of things.
I'm sure we'd have a lot of very heated discussions on that.
Well, that inspires me. Shane wants to have philosophical conversations. And I'm just like, but it's funny because the system supports both of us, and there's things to be learned from engaging with people who have different styles of thinking and all those kind of things. So
in the spirit of the system, we made a question: is this a good tool to explore subjective questions? Which is it's one of the fundamental questions, I suppose.
Yeah, but it's interesting because what's interesting is Shane and I have a completely different, I'd say, motivation set of go in terms of what we're going for. So that means that in order for us to do something with the tool, it has to serve both things. So it's really helpful to have different people involved that are trying to accomplish different things, because then it helps you avoid the risk of starting to just build your own favorite tool and leave the rest of the world behind. The more you have different personality types represented in the process, the more likely if you find things that everybody likes, there's a pretty good sign that you're staying in that zone of pleasing the general user, whoever they are. So I love the fact that we have Paul M out here arguing about Ephesians 1.5 and 1.11 and whether or not they support unconditional election. And that means all these things. So I love that. I think he's my dad would have been right in there arguing with him, but I'm not gonna. But hopefully he can find the people that do. So that's awesome.
Timothy's hand is up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of going off on a tangent, or my thoughts went off on a tangent from what Marc-Antoine was talking about. Well, one of the things I thought also is, the question that's on everybody's lips about everything these days is, have you thought about how AI and ChatGPT affects this? And I'll pair that question with another thought, which is one of the and maybe you can already do this through questions, that you probably can, but one of the nodes or types of nodes that we've talked about, not really implemented in any of our maps, but talked about, is essentially a request for information, right? Because if you're building an argument, we'll go back to our classic argument of, is the lockdown worth the economic and human cost or whatever? You could say, well, I think I take a position that it's worth it because probably we'll say this or that, or probably whatever. But there's a point where you don't have the expertise, especially if it's a small group where you're one-on-one debating with somebody, where it's like, gosh, well, you know, if the cost is going to be estimated at $1 billion, maybe not. What is the estimated cost? How many lives are people estimating would be saved with this action, right? I don't know. I mean, I think if it saves a lot of lives, it's probably worth doing. But we got to pause the debate until we figured
Right.
this little question out. So, in claims and arguments, you can create an argument that's like, yeah, it'll save X lives. Request for information. Somebody tell me how many.
Like it hinges on, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's two ways to take that. One, what is the mechanism for that in your system, which I guess would be opening a new question, right? And then you're benefiting from a larger community. Carol, can you get that? You're benefiting from a larger community versus a smaller community when you want to open up a question to expertise. We've also talked about being able to match expertise, a person's expertise to the question, so you get a little alert. Hey, people are wondering this sort of thing. So that's something to think about. But also in the modern age of ChatGPT, right now it's not good for excuse me.
It's fine. We can hear you.
It's not good for answering factual questions yet. Some factual questions it's good on, but not others. But at some point soon, it'll probably be even better where you can just pause and say, hey, ChatGPT, you know, what is the current consensus or estimate on this thing? And maybe it can come back and fill in some parts of your debate.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
really
that'd be sweet.
As soon as ChatGPT came out, I started it because it's always hard when you're working on stuff like this to come up with good sample content because it's hard to disagree with yourself. So I was thinking, oh, ChatGPT can take the other side. So, you know, give me a good solid argument for whatever. And I was disappointed. Like it would do a good job at a high level of something, but as soon as you start drilling down, man, it just starts getting lame. And I just realized, well, that's because nobody ever drills down. It doesn't have anything to draw from. It's like, that's the whole problem, you know? So, yeah, but I love the idea of the call for information, and we kind of have that informally already. That's funny. I created a question in here because I heard Jordan Peterson say something, and I thought, could that possibly be right? And I assumed it was actually because I assumed agree with him or not on whatever, and he's a polarizing figure now, or if he wasn't always, but I thought at least he's really careful with his words. Like he's really careful what he'd say. And so I put that in there, just wondering. Shane noticed it. Shane went out and did the research to find the thing he was talking about and posted it there for me. And then I read that and said, and I tried to just find that, but the problem is we've had too many releases since, so I don't think it represents right, unless I was looking in the wrong place, Shane. But literally the tool became, because I just created that focus, it just became to Shane like a research project. And we realized that, you know, there's lots of roles to play in a system like this that aren't being an advocate. They can be that kind of assistant. Some people just love that. They just love being that. I'm going to go chase that piece of information down.
Journalism breaks down into that, right?
Yes,
if it's
done well.
Impacts
yes.
journalism. There's the narrative journalists and there's the investigative journalists.
For
right?
sure.
We did show you SenseCraft, did we?
I was going to ask about that. Someone noted that down.
I didn't hear that.
I know. I was SenseCraft. It's a project I've had with Jack Park, and I will invite him to see this recording and engage with you, because we've created the tool to gamify, make this argumentation, what you're doing, into a more team sport. And we've thought a lot about the different roles that people would play in a team to make this happen. And I'm not saying we have concluded a lot of those thoughts, but it's certainly something we have some stuff about, and definitely I want us to have that conversation about
great
SenseCraft.garden if you're looking for it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Has anybody here run across street epistemology?
Yes.
Anybody know what that is? Yeah. So that's speaking of this idea of other roles you can play in the system. I first tried to rope those guys into Q Park, and I found that, especially the guy Reed that I asked to participate, he's so in this street epistemology mindset that he wasn't debating the person across from him. He was trying to street epistemology the person across from him. And I was like, no, you need to take a position, and they take a position, and you go at it. That's how you do this. But in this system, someone can very much do that. Somebody can just come into somebody's viewpoint and just play that role through lens of saying, you know, have you considered alternatives? You know, what would it take to not to
Or
unconvince you
through
of
adding
this?
questions, or through adding questions.
Right.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
did that.
And,
We had a couple
and those
where
become nice little tight lem subjects. Sorry, Shane, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that as a third party, one of the best ways we found to drive some of this loop is reading other people, being like, oh, they're actually talking about this. You make the question, you invite them, and you're like, bop, like now we have this isolated context. And yeah, that third party role
That sounds great.
can be extremely useful.
I really have to bow out, folks. It's a fascinating conversation. I
Thank you,
want to
Mark.
continue it. And thanks a lot.
Good to see you again. Yep.
Take
See
care.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Bye. Yeah, I mean, I can stick around for a while if anybody's interested or has more questions or whatever, but most importantly,
probably-
email and let's set you up in here. Sorry, Tim.
it seems I'm the host. Who wants to be host after me? Who should I assign?
Oh.
Well, I was gonna say maybe it's a good time to wrap it up because we've been going for quite a
Yeah, it's
while.
been
I
an
have to
hour.
get back to work.
Oh, I know.
So, that thing.
Joel's
Yeah.
ready. All right. Well, I'll be disappointed if we don't get six emails for ask
You will.
access. All right, cool.
Touch up.
And hopefully jump on Discord too, because we're busy in there talking about all this
And
stuff all the time.
Just a quick point of process. Is there a central email to follow up on, even about either kind of random unrelated subjects, as well as maybe
No,
if
we
you
have a
someone's email
Slack.
or Slack?
You should be on.
Slack.
You should be on the
Slack
Slack.
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
We'll send you invites if we don't have them.
That'd be great.
Can some? Do
Shane knows what that is.
I'll handle it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, goes
Bentley's
down.
back.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was great.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Take care.